Welcome everyone to the first episode of Rally the Creed. I'm with Colin Blackett, who is admin and founder of The Ones Who Came Before. Cole, would you like to sort of start off by talking about what the podcast is going to be?
Hi guys, welcome back to Rally the Creed. So we've taken a brief hiatus of 2 years thanks to COVID, which unfortunately put a dampener on all of our plans. We had hoped to make this podcast like the next big Assassin's Creed podcast, but then lockdown hit, we got hit with fatigue, and I'm sure a lot of you guys at home will have had it as well, where you just have these plans and then when the world goes upside down, it just doesn't happen. So now we're kickstarting it. This is us rebooting the podcast. But this time, Rally the Creed, instead of being just an audio podcast, this is going to be a video podcast. And it's going to be the only video podcast in the Assassin's Creed community I know about currently. So it's something a little bit different there. And the other twist for us really is that we're going to have a different host every week. So we're going to flip it up. We're going to have the guys from the Assassin's Creed Partnership Program, who is built up of 20 members currently, which is my team at the ones again before. And each time we do an episode, it's going to be a different person hosting it. And the idea is to bring people out the shadows and people who normally aren't on camera. So a lot of people in the Assassin's Creed community are behind a profile picture. This is their opportunity to step up and introduce themselves to the community and really show off and shine, stand out. Just a great opportunity for people to really come out of the woodwork and show us what they're made of, get different community members engaged. And each time we do it, we want to get different people involved. So we can get guests, we can get voice actors. I'd love for this to become like a social hangout for the Assassin's Creed community. So we get people from all over the world jumping in and joining, and then every episode's very different. So just a nice chill environment for the community, really.
That sounds good. So for today, what is the plan? What are we going to talk about? What do we want to talk about in general, moving forwards? What are the highlights you think for the next few months that we might want to address?
So with this podcast, I think the main thing we'd like to address is Assassin's Creed Mirage, because right now there's a massive gap in the community where no one really knows what's going on. It's almost like the marketing campaign kick-started back in September and then dropped off. There's been no word yet. There's been rumors and leaks, but there's been nothing official really. There was a trailer, which was amazing, back in September last year. But we want to get into speculation. We want to get into what are people excited for. We just want to discuss everything Assassin's Creed. And that's what we're always trying to do here at the Ones Again Before. We're trying to pinpoint everything that makes Assassin's Creed special, cover it, and just spark a bit of discussion. And that's where we're going to go with these podcasts. We're going to go into depth of the Assassin's Creed history, lore, what people are most excited about, and it just sparks some interesting discussions. And if people are interested, they can join us on board. We might get to a point where we can do these podcasts live and people can jump in, and then we might even have guests who want to join on the day, and then just expand it and take it to the next level. And then we'll get their favorite clips and use it on our social media channels. And we've got TikTok now as well, so it'd be cool to get maybe some like silly moments, some of the fun moments, and maybe even some outtakes like we've already had, and then get them all going online and really turn the Ones that came before into the home of community content, which is something we've always aimed to do. But we really are focused on the website right now. But video is a new focus for us, and we'd like to take it in that direction.
That sounds very promising. And so on the whole Mirage situation then, this kickstart some of the conversations around that. What do you think is the reason why Ubisoft have gone quiet? Is it a conflict of interest between different games coming out? Do you think it's part of their marketing strategy to sort of build up anticipation with a big release in spring? What do you think is going on in the background?
So I'm wondering if Ubisoft have internally delayed this game, because back when we started hearing things about Mirage, it was stated for an early 2023 release. And I feel like we're getting past that time frame where it's just not possible, especially when there's a very low-level marketing campaign. It's not really happening currently. We've had a massive 7-month window of nothing really going on. It's just chatter behind the scenes, leaks here and there, but we don't cover that here at the Ones Again Before. So we're all about the theories and theory crafting, getting into that sort of territory. So I'm starting to wonder if Ubisoft have internally delayed it for obvious reasons. I mean, if you look at financially, Ubisoft didn't have a great time. I mean, they they produce their figures, and they've had to tighten the belt a little bit. They can't spend the same money they were. And I wonder if that's because people aren't spending the same amount of money on games, or maybe microtransactions aren't making as much as they used to. But something has happened so that Ubisoft don't have the same finances they used to in terms of releasing the game. So I feel like they have to be cautious now when it comes to releasing. And with Mirage as well, there's a lot of hype around this game because it has to be a good Assassin's Creed game. It has to set the new standard, and it has to reinvent a lot of pillars that have just dropped off recently in the franchise. So I think there's a lot of anticipation. I think what we really need is Mirage to start up again with the campaign and just become like the next standing point for Assassin's Creed. So like we've had great games in the past. We've had good games recently. You know, it does vary on quality, but Mirage needs to be seen as like the next level. It has to take the franchise somewhere different and even back to the roots. So I do wonder if Ubisoft have had these problems internally, and it's a shame because what should have been the start of a great campaign back in September has now left people wanting more. And now Ubisoft have pulled out of E3.
Yeah.
Convention. They're running their own one, which they've done in the past as well, Ubisoft Forward. So that's their opportunity for gameplay. And people, ever since the game went up for pre-orders, they've been asking for gameplay, show us screenshots, but it's just not been ready. They've not been ready to do it. And we're just left in a bit of a waiting game. No one knows what's going on when the game's coming out. There's no release date currently. So we're all just waiting around for the next thing to happen. So, like I say, I wonder if there are problems behind the scenes, but we need Ubisoft to get this train back on the tracks and start rolling with it because we're all excited for the next Assassin's Creed game.
I think that's a really important point that you mentioned there as well, is that this game has to perform well. And we've seen some of the biggest brands in gaming flop. Halo, for example, you know, kicked off Xbox. Console gaming was sort of brought together with that. That game flopped. Halo Infinite was you know, it had a good few weeks and then it fell off because, again, internal conflicts, 3 or 4 different development teams, conflicts of interest, you know, changing partnerships and stuff. And I think Ubisoft, you're right, is they've had some good games. I liked Origins. You know, I like Black Flag. You know, there's some good ones. I like Assassin's Creed 3, which is a conflict of itself. You know, that's a strong debate there. But there have been some good games recently. And I think this one does need to sort of, yeah, as you said, bring back some of those elements that built the community that kind of, you know, is there today waiting for this next big thing. And I do wonder perhaps that some of the good games that have come out recently, you know, Elden Ring or Hogwarts Legacy, whether they have sort of spooked Ubisoft. You know, you've had some good games in the last 6 months, and they may be thinking this game's not ready, so let's push it back because we can't compete with the caliber of game that's come out. We need it to be strong. We can't have people falling back on these other games. But then on that as well, outside of Mirage, there are other things in the pipeline as well that, you know, around the brand Assassin's Creed. Do you think any of those are going to come to the forefront, you know, using the license perhaps for TV series and things like that?
I mean, there's a lot of Assassin's Creed projects in the works right now. And when Ubisoft did the Assassin's Creed conference last year, everyone was so excited. There was a lot to be revealed. I mean, there's Assassin's Creed Infinity, there's Assassin's Creed Jade, there's all these projects going on, so many. They literally outlined the next 3-4 years of the Assassin's Creed franchise, and everyone's waiting to hear about them as well. But like you said, they might be a little bit spooked by these other mainstream games that are coming out, and then they're all very different. But for Ubisoft, Mirage was meant to be like a spin-off title. Like from what I was hearing, it was like a smaller game, but people don't want that really. They want like a massive Assassin's Creed world. Everyone's already interested in Basim because they've played with him on Valhalla, so you don't actually play as him, but you play against him. He's basically like a mentor to your character, to the Assassin Guild in Ravensthorpe. So we already know that character so well, and this is his prequel, this is his opportunity, and everyone really wants to see what's going on with that. But we've just not heard anything in so long now. It's just this massive gap now. And with the Ubisoft Forward event, it might be that is an opportunity for Ubisoft to shine and show us gameplay, show us what's going on, and really take us into the future of Assassin's Creed like they were going to last year. I mean, they gave us a bit of a tease last year with all of the, the little initial teaser trailers, the snippets. But like you say, with the TV series, like that was announced 2-3 years ago, and we've not seen anything from that. No one even knows the location, what the development stage is on that. Because last I heard, the key writer Jed Stewart had left production, so there's a bit of an issue there because maybe they're looking for new writers. And with the Assassin's Creed movie back in 2016, that took the franchise in a new direction, and then they didn't follow up with a sequel. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do. They're still working on all the transmedia. So there's a lot of books, comic books in development. There's a Black Flag anime, I want to say, like a TV series going on over there in China. So there's a ton of Assassin's Creed projects going on. It'd be nice to see a little bit of what's going on at the next event. But for me, I really want to see Mirage. Like, gameplay is key. Like I said before, everyone who pre-ordered it, I mean, they've pre-ordered the game off one trailer and they've not seen anything else. Like, I think it's about time. If the game is to come out this year, Ubisoft have to fulfill the wishes of everyone. Because whenever they release a tweet now, all of the replies just say, Mirage,
where's the game?
Where is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? As you said, they teased the early 2023, and we see this more and more, and don't we, in the video game world, where before you'd have 10 years ago, I'd say, release December 21st, and it would release September 21st. Now then it went to holidays, Easter, then spring. Now it's early or late year. It's those time frames are becoming more ambiguous, as the years go on. Before you got a date, now you got a season, now you get a quarter or a half year, kind of like so. As you said, it is, if you pre-order a game and you don't know when you're going to get it, it's a tricky one for clans, because you do start building this, it's almost this allure. They expect more, because if you're spending longer on the game, they expect a better game at the end. So that means that Ubisoft have to perform even better. They have to make an even better game, because the longer they work on the game, the better the game theoretically should be. So it's a fine line between, keeping the fans engaged, as you said, teaser trailers, gameplay, or keeping it quiet, but knowing that when you do release something, it's got to be the best. Otherwise, what's the hype about, and why did it take so long?
That's it. It really does have to perform, and especially with people wanting an Assassin's Creed 1 remake as well. And that's something that wasn't announced, so we're not sure if that's going ahead. There's rumors, that always have been, but that's such an ambitious project, because you'd have to go back, get all the assets from the previous team, and bring that to life. They've already done it with Assassin's Creed Remastered. So they've had AC2, Brotherhood, Revelations. They've brought all these games to the forefront with the new graphics and everything. But going back to a game from 2007, it's a hard job in 2023. So it just makes you wonder, what are Ubisoft working on behind the scenes? And with this game acting as a prequel to Valhalla and Return to the Roots, it's starting to bridge the gap between the hidden ones and the assassins. So this really is the perfect way of answering the questions that we've already seen. How were the Templars formed? And this is going to be how were the assassins formed? They go from hidden ones to Assassin Brotherhood, and it's sort of in that time frame. It's a really interesting timeline. It's going to be interesting to see how it all comes together and bridges the gap. And Bakhtim is the perfect character for this, because he's alive and well in the modern day, as we saw in Valhalla. So he's actually right there in the modern day timeline, and now we're seeing all the things that happened in the past. So he's got everything he needs in the future, because he's been trained in the past. So it's all this. It's almost like time travel, because he lived such a long time. He's managed to succeed, and it's also going to show how he was taken over by Loki, the first civilization. So it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see it. But like I say, we've been waiting around for a long time now. And do you think in this new game, as you said, that the ambition for Ubisoft was to make it a smaller game, so perhaps not a full open world game, but maybe like a smaller, almost like a DLC game that is released? Do you think that is because they want to do more of that, or do you think that's just because a constraint in resource meant they wanted to bring something out that they knew the fans wanted, but they couldn't release what would be a full experience, perhaps like Origins or Valhalla? So they've gone back to more of a linear Assassin's Creed game. What do you think the reason for that is? Do you think they heard what the fans wanted,
and they gave them something, or do you think it was more of a here's what we can do for now, and in the background we're working on this, as you know, bigger picture thing where we can have everything in one?
See, I think that's exactly it. I think Assassin's Creed Mirage is sort of meant to be like a stepping stone. So it's like Valhalla's engine. It's like a smaller, bite-sized chunk of a game, and then a bigger game is to follow. And then
Yeah,
the other thing is, it could have been initially planned that Mirage comes out early in that year, and then the TV series, so that'll be this year, later this year. But for me, it doesn't feel like it's going to follow that timeline at all now, just because I feel like we'd have heard something. No one knows anything about the TV show. So I do wonder if it maybe is down to the fans asking for, the smaller games and the quality over quantity. I mean,
yeah,
Assassin's Creed, it's become a bit of a machine. It's been pumping out games for years, and some, it's ranged in quality. Some are better than others. And for a lot of fans, they're just waiting for an Assassin's Creed game to come out that really is ticking all the boxes of the
yeah,
pillars of the franchise. I mean, for example, parkour has been, I would say, the weakest link in the franchise recently. Stealth has improved massively, but has a way to go. But parkour, they have to reinvent that whole pillar, if you ask me. So
yeah,
it's slow, it's sluggish. You don't feel like you're a fluid
no,
movement. So if you look at real parkour artists, so people who are free running, they do this for a living. They're performing moves we've never seen in an Assassin's Creed game, and
yeah,
time after time, we're just seeing the same old, slow moves, pole
clambering,
vaulting,
yeah,
pillaring, and
yeah,
back jumping, and it doesn't feel right. Even like the body type, like I feel like with Assassin's Creed games, like they tend to go for like an average run, but sometimes the
mm.
guards are faster. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
need to really look at parkour, and Valhalla really, it sort of set the framework for parkour opportunities. So I actually wrote that in my review of Valhalla. The opportunities for parkour were excellent,
mm.
but parkour itself, it needs a lot of work. I think
Yeah,
if anything, they should look at that. And these are what people are asking for. They're asking for better stealth, better parkour. They want the Assassin Brotherhood back,
mm.
and that's hopefully what Mirage is taking so long to come out for. Maybe they're looking at these key pillars, and
Yeah,
like I said before, maybe people are just overwhelmed by the amount of Assassin's Creed content that has been released recently. There's been so much, really, over the last
yeah,
5 years, especially. And now is a good chance for Ubisoft to use a new platform that's coming out, Assassin's Creed Infinity, that they announced,
mm.
which is going to be a hub for all things Assassin's Creed. They can use this platform to release onto games that already exist. So it'd
Yeah,
be nice. Like, I mean, we saw them boot up Hexe, which is going to be a smaller game about the witch trials. They booted that game up via that platform. But if Infinity is the home of all things Assassin's Creed, it would be so cool if it could add to games that already exist. So then you're not just buying games on there and you're
yeah,
blocked from it. So you open up this platform, you open up the game, and then it's like, oh, here's a new mission for Assassin's Creed 3, for example. Can you imagine that?
yeah, yeah. No, that for me personally, that's the way I can see a lot of video games going, and being a massive, as I said, Halo fan as well. That they had that with the Master Chief Collection, where essentially they brought in all the games under one game. So you buy the one game, it has it, and you can chop between missions. So if you wanted to do all missions that were related to a certain vehicle type from all the different games, you could do that. And I could see Assassin's Creed, doing all the stealth missions, for example, or the chase missions from all the different Assassin's Creed games on one platform. That would work really, really well. And going back to what you said about the parkour as well, and the fact that it feels slow and sluggish, that was one of the things I really liked about Assassin's Creed 3 and Connor was this almost, because he was like self-trained, was like this brutish. He was just an absolute unit. Like there was no elegance to what he did, unlike Ezio Auditore and Altair. There was some elegance to that, and there was some gravitas. And Connor was different. He was just this raw power and vengeance, and even when you went into the woods, you could still parkour on trees, you could still
Yes.
climb walls, you could still climb over tents and forts and stuff like that. And I thought that was a really good transition between what traditionally in Assassin's Creed was residential built up areas into a
Mhm.
rural setting. But these new Assassin's Creed games, thinking Origins, there wasn't a lot. You could travel through a desert and it's flat, and then you get to a pyramid and it's a linear climb, and then you slide down, but there was nothing in between to really create that parkour
Yeah.
experience,
And
unlike the
it was
original
like
games.
little towns as well. So it was like in the middle of the desert, these tiny little like shack buildings
Yeah,
almost. And like for parkour, it's not really ticking the boxes. You know, you
No,
really want to have this fluid movement, like I said before, and you want to really move and feel
it's
like an
fast.
eagle,
Yeah,
like an assassin, above the crowd. And like when you've
yeah,
got these small areas, it's not really doing it. And then Valhalla, again, it was like a lot of forest areas, but you could only do limited parkour in the trees. So
mm,
whereas Ace is free, you could really climb them
fine.
trees and get, you could even hang people from the trees.
Yeah,
Like they brought in
yeah,
all these mechanics, but with Valhalla, it tried to bring back the tree parkour, but that's just one example of how
yeah,
parkour can be improved. But they really need to look into that pillar, especially
yeah.
going forward.
And do you think as well? So you mentioned about the recreation of the first Assassin's Creed game and stuff, and we see a lot of game companies now. They essentially will only ever put forward a game which can be monetized post purchase via microtransactions, DLCs, customized skins, things like that. Do you think that perhaps the Ubisoft's sort of absence of voicing their interest in recreating that game is because it would be a large investment into a game that you couldn't really monetize unless you were going to add some, DLC or some skins, for example, to the game, so you could have some customizable, assets to add to your character. Do you think that could potentially be it?
I mean, that's a really interesting point. And the other thing is with Assassin's Creed 1 is if they were to go down the road, like you said, with adding DLC content, there is a book by Oliver Burden called The Secret Crusade, which follows Altair's adventures alongside it. There's also a game, which is, I think it's called Assassin's Creed Altair Chronicles, which came out back in 2007. So that actually follows Altair going after a human piece of Eden. So a lady called Ada, who is the Chalice. She had basically the same powers as the pieces of Eden, and she was like attracted to them. She knew where they were, like a sixth sense. So I
Okay.
guess that sort of ties into an eagle vision sort of
Yeah.
sense. But they could use all of this written material and create new content from it. But I think rather than producing the content and making money, because I'm sure they would with Assassin's Creed 1, Altair is a massive character.
Yeah.
There's two problems I can think of. The first one is the team that created Assassin's Creed 1, Ubisoft have had licensing disagreements with Patrice
Uh,
Désilets. So he was the creator of Assassin's Creed alongside Jade Raymond and the team back in AC1 back in 2007. And there was massive disagreements over the rights to the game, and Patrice left the company, and there's been years of lawsuits. There's been all sorts going on,
mm,
and they're not on the best terms as far as I'm aware. So that would be an issue for recreating the game. And then the
yeah.
other thing I can think of is that whose voice would they get for Altair? Because Philip Shahbaz was the Assassin's Creed 1 Altair, and he did a great job, but it was like an American voice. And then we see Assassin's Creed Revelations, which brings Cass Amber into the mix, and it was said that he is the true voice of Altair. So which one would they go for? And then
Mm,
at the same time, there have been allegations against Cass Amber made during the Me Too movement, which
mm,
also throws a spanner in the works. So who would they get to voice the character? And that would be problematic in itself. So there's all these things to consider. And the other thing is it's a very old game, like 2007. It's a great game, don't get me wrong, but it's so hard to bring a game like that back to life, like
yeah.
the old mechanics, and they'd probably have to,
And it's slow as well. That's the thing is
yeah,
our as a gamer, what we want from a game is different. So I'm just thinking of some games that I've seen recently remastered that you play, and you know, even things like Rayman, for example,
mhm,
those games, they just don't feel like they used to back in the day, whether that be nostalgia or the fact that you're building
yeah,
a game that used to be clunky on a new engine that's now fluid and it feels different. You're right. It's very hard to bring that back to life without making it a new game because all those quirks, all those things that we liked about the original game, you kind of have to rebuild in the new game,
yeah.
but knowing that you could do better, but not doing it better because that's not what the true game experience was back then.
And it can't lose the charm of what it originally had. So if it feels like it's just purely for money, then there's no point doing it
Yeah,
because the fans straight away will call it out.
yeah, and I think that's a big one as well, isn't it? As you said with Mirage, is fans really, really want a game that goes back to the roots of Assassin's Creed, but at the same time, it does need to feel like it's a fan service. It needs to feel
Mhm.
like they're doing it because that's what we want, not just because they want to make some quick money before they do something else and they pivot. So I think, yeah, that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I totally want Assassin's Creed Mirage to tick all the boxes that we mentioned before. But there's a lot of things they could do that, even though it's meant to be a smaller game, they could really add some scope to it. I mean, for example, it's a region we've not really seen before with Mirage. And then from the trailer as well, it looks like it's going to bring in Alamut, which is the original assassin, from the book Alamut. It's the original assassin castle. So whereas you had Masyaf in Assassin's Creed 1, this is like a precursor to that. So like a base for the assassins. So it is literally the birth of the Assassin Brotherhood after the hidden ones go into hiding.
Yeah, a
So
lot of lore there. So it'd be
yeah, it
nice.
really is.
You could fill it with Easter eggs, things on the walls, the hidden vaults,
Mhm.
paintings. Like there's a lot of fan service you could do, as you said, like just dotted around. And the historical period's really significant as well. It's a really, really interesting time to set an Assassin's Creed game. And I think the culture as well, the vibrancy of the game, it'll be a very nice. Well, we saw in the teaser trailer, it's a very vibrant. It does remind me of the first Assassin's Creed game. There's a lot of like local markets, and yeah, even just the style of the brickwork and the towers and stuff. It looks promising from what I can see. A lot of vantage points, a lot of stealth, and I like the things like smoke and stuff like that. Like just back to the original games as well. A lot more tactical than run and gun.
Yeah, that's it. And the cool thing with that trailer is that when Basim uses the red smoke bomb, that's almost like a callback to Revelations where you could craft your own smoke bombs. And that's a mechanic they could bring into this game. I mean, they took it away in, like, they had Revelations, and you go to Black Flag, and then just all these mechanics have gone. I mean, in Revelations, you could craft these smoke bombs, you could put blood in it, you could put gold in it. So if you put gold in the bombs, you could have people running in the street, the beggars will
Yes,
run to you, and
yeah,
everyone will grab the money, and it's a distraction, and that's great for an assassin if you're hiding in plain sight. I mean, you've literally got something in your pocket that can bring the whole street to the other side, and you can just
yeah.
sneak in. It's perfect for distracting people. It's like what Ezio did in his, the original games, where you could just throw the
Coins.
money,
Yeah, throw the coins. Yeah,
or you could get the courtesans, and they could distract the guards, and
yeah.
it's a classic Assassin's Creed, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's, as you said, that is what's missing in these newer games. Is that, yeah, that almost like grassroots Assassin's Creed, where it's all about the parkour, the step, getting in and out without having to destroy everyone and everything in sight, which
Yes.
you kind of end up going into, especially Valhalla, and I think Origins to an extent as well. Perhaps because of the way that stealth was kind of broken, you kind of had to go in and take everyone out. It was very difficult to play the game in a like a covert stealth manner.
Yeah.
And even if you did use everything at your disposal, if you use CWR to kind of like scope everyone out and stun the guards, and you still got spotted, and then next thing you know, it's a riot. But yeah, you're right. I've recently played the Assassin's Creed 2 end to end, and I did for a lot of that try and do like no hit missions with no hits, don't get seen, which in the newer games is much harder to do.
It really is, and that's even if you're hiding in a bush, for example. Like somehow the guards seem to spot me every time.
Yeah, the guards.
How are you seeing me?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think now as well. I think the last time I played the very first Assassin's Creed was 6 years ago, and yeah, I think I told you that the game broke. I couldn't get past the mission on the rooftops. No matter how much I tried to parkour, my game just dropped me. It wouldn't mantle. And even that was quite funny as well. I had to find very creative ways of getting around missions without the ability to mantle.
And there's a lot of ways of doing Assassin's Creed missions, but it's like you said, it seems that a lot of the games recently have been forcing a conflict approach, especially in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where you had to join Sparta, or you were joining these sects, on both sides of the war, and you had to pick an allegiance. And then there were missions where you literally had to all out fight. You didn't have a choice in it. So it's just heavy conflict. I mean, I know they put a lot of effort into the conflict systems, all new weapons and everything.
Yeah.
But in an Assassin's Creed game, it's not that important for like original OG fans of the franchise. I mean, maybe new fans are looking for fight the way in, and that's one way of doing it. There's a lot of approaches in these games, but it'd be interesting if Ubisoft found more creative ways. And especially with black box missions, which are in Unity. So there were all sorts of ways of doing these missions. But when they did these black box missions, there was like a special way of doing it. You could do it where you would unlock a special cinematic of a kill. And they did it in Syndicate as well. So I'm thinking of one where Jacob Fry stabbed a template in the face through a picture because he was at the right place at the right time. And then there's another one where he's pushed into like a hospital and there's a doctor doing surgeries, and then they think he's a dead body to experiment on, and he stabs him through the cloth that's on top of him. And then Unity, for example, there's the one where you're in the confession booth and then you stab the guy through the booth. Like, there's all these cool opportunities for the mission to go. And I guess that would be like the canon way in the Assassin's Creed lore of how this kill actually happened.
Yes,
but there's loads of things they can do with the missions to make them more interesting.
And I think, that does touch on something as well, which is what we don't see too much of in Assassin's Creed is so it's quite the missions are linear. Some obviously traditionally you're stuck to a path, whereas now in newer games you can kind of roam around and you can kind of leave the area to reapproach different vantage points. But we don't really see too much of missions where your actions impact story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you spare someone's life versus if you don't, if you decide to assassinate someone from behind, or if you try and take them from afar, we don't really see how that impacts the story. And I think that'd be quite an interesting one to see in a newer game as well, as maybe not dialogue, because that can be quite boring to have to choose between 3 different speech options like in some games. But perhaps, as you were saying, if you kill someone in a certain way, you then hear the guards later on talking about, oh, did you he was killed without even being seen, he was hiding behind a painting. That would be cool, because then it brings you into the world almost as if you're having this impact on the NPCs around you. Be quite an interesting one to look at.
I like that idea. And rather than what they've done in the past with Odyssey, like that's probably the best example of this, where like the dialogue, whatever you chose, I felt like it didn't massively impact the actual conversation. And then all of the options as well for like spare, kill, like later on down the line, it didn't really massively impact the game. So with something like that, that could be really interesting, because you could get the new opportunities, you could get, like you said, the additional narratives that come down like further on, you could get rewards. So if you're playing like an assassin, why not unlock assassin robes? You're getting rewarded by the Brotherhood. And with this game Mirage, it looks like you start as a novice. I mean, in the trailer, he's literally a street thief. He comes from nothing and he's working his way up through the ranks. And every time he does a mission, like with Altair, it'd be cool if he got like a different piece of equipment, more training. And for example, they could bring back the customization options from the original Assassin's Creed games. I know you're a big fan of Monteriggioni, where you could literally put some money into the town and make that the hub of the assassins in Italy. So it'd be cool if we could have like our own base where you're putting the money in. Like, I have thousands of pounds in games, not in real life, in games. Much money, right? All this money, and it's like, what do you do with it? I mean, you complete the game. It's like, what am I going to do with it? It'd be cool if they found a way to bring that in again, like you did with the Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhoods. You're literally putting the money into your local area. You're improving your community. Shay did it in Assassin's Creed Rogue. I mean, he's a Templar, but he's building the houses of people.
Yeah. And I think trying to think as well, like we see this in a lot of games. Like I think one of the biggest ones I can think of was Skyrim, which was a fantastic game when it came out, but you had all these people saying, we've got all this gold, we've got, we've got all this stuff, I'm fed up of giving Lydia all my possessions and her being stuck in a door. So they brought out an entire DLC where you could essentially buy a house, build a house, expand your house, have families, have storage, and that was fantastically successful, because as you said, you finish a game, you've got all this stuff, and it's what's now? What do I do next? And it's that's what I loved about that Assassin's Creed 2 was just the ability to sort of build out this thing, and then it makes you money that you can then use and then reinvest. And I think you could, especially if we're looking back at Mirage and the idea that perhaps he's on the streets and he hasn't got a lot to begin with, watching that transition as you play the character into actually owning things or being able to invest in things. Maybe you can buy your own market stalls that make you money, and then they could be lookouts, so then you can get letters saying, oh, they've seen guards here, or they've heard this, and building more of an immersive experience in the city, and you could almost have different areas that you could go to. I think that would be quite an interesting one as well. Obviously, that's a different whole element of a game, but I like that in games. And I've finished Hogwarts Legacy, the same again. Halfway through that game, you get access to the Room of Requirement, which you can customize the paintings on the wall to the color of the shade of wallpaper. You can, and perhaps it's something that it's not really part of the game. You don't need it, but it's nice. And I spent hours making my room look really cool for no reason, just because I wanted it to look cool. But yeah, I think a lot of gamers like that. They like the ability to customize something in a game, especially in a game like Assassin's Creed, where you're always moving. You're never in one place. It's always nice to come back and just kind of like have your own little area and maybe have all your weapons on a wall. But
that's such a cool idea with the having the stores, and it's almost like you're creating your own little spy network in the towns.
yeah,
So from that, the more you do of something like that, these missions, these little side quests where you're pumping money into the economy, you're building a network, you could gain information, like vital pieces of information from that.
Yeah.
So
and it could be
almost like Game of Thrones, with the what is it called, the Master of Whisperers, where he's getting all the little birds chatting here with all the information.
Yeah, and I think especially in a game like Assassin's Creed, it's like that's what they would have. They would have eyes on the ground. They would kind of have this network of almost like fellow comrades that aren't in the inner circle. They're not part of the Brotherhood, but they're out there, sort of being the eyes and the ears. The allies. And
that's exactly like Ezio had. He built this Brotherhood from street thieves. He was running around with the thieves in AC2. They taught him how to do parkour properly.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, and I think that, and again, that'd be a great throwback if you kind of see, Bassam coming in, teaching these people, not teaching them perhaps, but maybe giving them wisdom, giving them insight, the odd skill that you can. Then you build in this whole. As a player of the game, you feel like you're not just playing as one character. You're almost playing as a community. You're playing it's a movement against the enemy, not just you as a lone wolf. Which some games do feel like you are a lone wolf, even though you do have people around you. It is just very much you versus everyone else. It'd be quite nice to have that sense of camaraderie.
I totally agree, and that's what the Assassins are, isn't it? It's an ideology. So even though people aren't always aligned with the Brotherhood, they can still follow the Brotherhood's ideology. So freedom, peace, and like I said before, with the thieves, for example, they're probably just looking to feed their families.
Yeah.
And if the Templars are in control of that area, and then they're probably putting all these restrictions in place so that they can't live the life they want to live, so that they're being forced into this, literally onto the streets. And we see Basim steal in the first trailer that we've had.
We do, yeah.
So he's no doubt got connections with these people.
Yeah.
So you could build up this street thief alliance, all these people who are just the outcasts, and you could have them, you have the assassins in the middle who are like secret organization, and then all the people around who can help them in their missions.
Yeah, and I think as well, if we have a look at the historical period that the game is set in, and did that article on the website around it, if it does go down that path of looking at the conflict between the brothers taking over power, and you have the invading forces coming in, and essentially it's a lot of betrayal and murder within the family, and then exile, and then redemption, and it's a really, really, really interesting time of actual history in the area. But one of the biggest things is that the eventual demise comes from within. It comes from spies within the inner circle of the people in power and in control. And I think that plays really well, is that if Bassam has all these people, these eyes and ears, he's going to be part of that inner circle, and he'll be able to gather that information from the source, whether that be, whether it be a butler or a maid or a kitchen cook, whoever it is, feeding that information back to him because 6 months ago, you gave him some bread on the street and he remembered you, and then did that kind of thing. I could imagine that'd be really, really interesting. Or you teach him sleight of hand, and then when he's on the street as a thief, and then he becomes a chef in the kitchen, and then he then uses sleight of hand to steal a letter, and it's like you can kind of see your impact in real time and in the bigger picture. I'd like that, which you kind of
cool.
you kind of do see that in some of the other games.
That is where where the franchise should go, really, where
Yeah.
your actions really have an impact on the storyline. And
Yeah.
that's how it feels. It's like the Hitman games where there's all these opportunities, and then with something like that, with Assassin's Creed, they could really play into the fact that disguises are a thing once again. So
Yeah.
we've not really seen that recently. But in Assassin's Creed Liberation, for example, Evelyn had all these cool disguises. I mean, you never really see that now. Like you said, like sneaking in, it's literally an attack from within. The
Yeah.
assassins would 100% be doing that.
It
It'd be
would be,
part of
and
it.
yeah, and I think as well because obviously it's early doors, so Basim is going to have a number of, I imagine, a number of different attires and outfits during that,
Mhm.
the sequences that we play through. And yeah, you're right. It could be a case that maybe as a character, as a player, you can pick how do you want to go in an assassin-esque robe, knowing you'll stand out, or do you want to go more stealth and pick at the start of the mission something else, or you go to the shop and you can buy it, for example. I think that's interesting to have your attire actually impact the game, because oftentimes it is just a
Definitely.
skin. It doesn't actually have any impact. And perhaps it has stats, but it doesn't actually have like any physical impact on the game. Whereas if you dress as a guard, they treat you as a guard, but
Yes.
only for a period of time. Maybe they ask you questions and that you don't respond with the right answer, and then the alarm goes, so you have to be quick. There are different elements of that could all play into the assassin kind of vibe. Or if you don't do a mission before, where you skip a quest where you actually find the password or the secret code, you just go straight to the mission. You get halfway in, and then they ask you the code, and because you didn't do the mission, you don't know. Like that again, it plays into this whole there is a bigger story to be told outside of you just running around.
That's a really cool idea. And then the other thing with that is that with these side quests, you could really gain valuable information that's going to impact the game later on. So, like you said, with the passwords, that's such a cool idea. And Ubisoft have been dancing around it for years. I mean, like I said, with the black box mission, that's probably the closest we've ever got to something like that. But
Yeah,
something like that, where you have an impact on the world, like a small token of generosity, like you said before, with the giving someone bread, something so simple could impact the game in a huge way. Like
yeah,
that could literally liberate a city of a tyrant.
yeah. Just from the one act, and perhaps the game goes down the route of giving you the choice, or it's just part of the story and you kind of have to pick up, oh, I remember that guy, or it's something that you do just by choice and it does play out like that. And perhaps if you don't give that guy bread, it's the maid you met during the main mission that actually
Mhm.
helps you, not the guy in the kitchen. There'll be different ways around it, but yeah, I can really imagine a lot of fans liking that,
Yeah,
especially as you said, through the whole meaning of the brotherhood and this camaraderie and this sense of a single cause. So even though they aren't an assassin, they are still part of your cause and they still have that value. And I think, as you said, we see Bassam get old, so we know he's there in the end. So it'd be nice, perhaps, again, to see how he influences people and their life as he gets old, which we kind of see through people like SEO.
definitely. And the other thing I'd like to see with Basim is with his Loki side, it's a bit manipulative for what we've seen in the past. Is Eivor is fully manipulated by Basim, and that's probably because this side of him has taken over. So there's
Mm,
this second voice in his head that's controlling him the whole time. And it'd be cool if we could really see the conflict between the two. So
yeah,
with this, Basim may have his own idea of how to perform a mission, and you might have Loki, which is like the devil on your shoulder, and he's saying like, just kill the guard and steal the money from his family, and all
yeah,
these horrible things could happen.
yeah,
It's like, oh, you need money to afford new robes. Oh, why don't you go and they'll kill that person over there and do things that are
yeah,
like very questionable to the Brotherhood, like
yeah. It could be. Yeah, I
yeah,
get you because, yeah, that's a really, really interesting play as well, isn't it? And I think, yeah, it would add a second dimension to the game, which Assassin's Creed games, they kind of implemented it. I'm thinking of especially the first game, where if you do kill, if you just kill like a civilian, you get desynchronized,
yes.
and that was the game's kind of way of ensuring that you kind of follow this path. Um, as you play the game, you just go on a rampage, but also kind of building out the lore that there is the ability in being, you are helping the people, not running around just
Yeah.
throwing knives at them. But perhaps in this, you're right. It'd be really interesting to see if there is that conflict, and perhaps there's maybe like a meter or a system in place, like a subsystem in place within the game, where if you do a lot of bad things, it does detriment you some way down the line, even if it's just increased prices in shops. Like there could be something in play where, or you can't go into certain areas until you've redeemed yourself by, I don't know, helping some fallen maiden. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see how they go about that if they do want to go around the whole dark side, the whispering in the ear.
And I guess the closest I can think of with that, where your actions have consequences, is in Assassin's Creed 2 is a good one, where Ezio did too many things in the street. So let's say he was robbing everyone, all of a sudden notoriety would go up, and then all these posters would go up.
The posters,
More recently, they've done it where if you kill too many civilians, obviously you desynchronize, that's still a thing.
Yeah, that's still,
They would send people after you, like specialist mercenaries in Odyssey and Origins. They were really fun.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like a branch of the Templars that after Basim, maybe they want to experiment on him. So like in Valhalla, we saw a lot of like mind manipulation stuff so that they could find out more about the first civilization, the issue that was taking over them. And they were performing all sorts of horrible rituals. And we even see that in Assassin's Creed 1 with one of the original Templars that we see. He's using herbs and stuff which turn people insane. And he's sort of like, I guess, replicating what can be done with a piece of Eden and the effect it has on people's minds. So, like I said, with the dual conflict in someone's head, like I can't see Loki, keeping to the creed. Like, yes, Basim will because he's raised by the Brotherhood. But, for example, killing guards in Assassin's Creed has no impact. You can kill as many guards as you like, and really, would an assassin do that? Maybe only if they had to. But for example, you could kill a guard. They've got a family somewhere, right? I mean, this nameless guard you've just killed.
Yeah,
they might have needed that job to pay the bills.
Yeah, and I think one of the best games I've ever played with that real impact that what you do has real meaning is Red Dead Redemption 2 has that, where if you are a menace, you just can't enter places. It's just a full Wild West. You enter a town, you enter this, you enter a tavern or whatever it is called, and next thing you know, it's just, there's bounty hunters after you, the town's being shot up, you just can't escape, and you have to go and sort of hand yourself in to the guard, the police officers, the sheriff, and essentially pay your dues to get out of it. And there are points where I was playing the game being a cowboy, and then you go to do a mission and you just cannot do the mission because the NPC that you're trying to speak to will shoot you if you come near him, because you are notable. You are literally, there's a bounty on your head. And that was a game which, as you said, even guards, people, if you just want to steal a carriage to get somewhere quicker, that has an impact.
Yeah.
And they will remember you. So it's like everything. And the only way really around it is to pick them up and put them in a bush. But if someone sees you, they'll run and tell everyone. And it's like very much actions have consequences. And I think you said the earlier games had that with Assassin's Creed 2. You got to pull the posters down.
Yeah.
The newer games, I'm playing Origins, not so much. You really could just go and go ham in Origins and just run away. So yeah.
That's it. And that sort of reminds me of Skyrim as well, where if you perform too many, I guess, notorious deeds in somewhere like Riften, I mean, you turn up to the gate, they're waiting for you.
You've committed crimes against Skyrim and our people. What's that you in your defense? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'll go to prison for a day. Yeah, no, it is. And I think games that have that, I think it adds another layer. Kind of adds that, should I do that? But as we said, some of the newer Assassin's Creed games, you can't really get away from it. Some missions just require you to kill everyone. There's just no alternative. Especially if I'm just thinking, Assassin's Creed 3, been a while, but I do remember some elements of that game where you just have to kill everyone.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going into like a bandit camp.
Yeah, there was that, and then there was the tailing missions, which are really hard as well. Where
Yeah,
you're on the rooftops, and then all of a sudden, all the British are on the roofs as
on
well.
the
Like,
roofs. Yeah,
so
yeah,
hard.
yeah. And I think as well, I know that game is again very controversial. People don't like Connor, but that game created something I think that Assassin's Creed never really thought would be anything, which was the boat, the sailing, which
Yes,
kind
yeah,
of built out Black Flag, which is
it
now
really
known not
does.
even as an Assassin's Creed game. It's the best pirate game ever made. Like it is just people play that game because it's a pirate game, not because it's Assassin's Creed. And that came out of Assassin's Creed 3. And I remember playing Assassin's Creed 3 thinking, oh, this is fun. This is like a nice little like mini game. And then they
Yeah,
built a whole game out of the mini game, and I was like, ah, yeah, really like
it's
that.
smart. It's really
Yeah,
cool. And
it
that's what they
is.
can do with Assassin's Creed. I mean, they can build these mechanics and then they can go further with it, or they can even
Yeah,
create spin-off games if they wanted, not necessarily Assassin's Creed. I mean,
no,
there's so much they can do. I mean, they must build tons of assets for every game. And yes, they reuse some across each title, but each time they're building like different worlds, they're building every single item of
yeah,
clothing. They could easily share internally. And a good example of this is For Honor, which is the Assassin's Creed. No, sorry, it's the Warrior game that they've got, and they had like Assassin's Creed like helmets in that, and they had like
yeah,
all these themed weapons and things. They could easily move stuff like that across to Assassin's Creed just as like fan service, or they
yeah,
could do it with, like we said before, you do a mission in a certain way, you can unlock this.
yeah. I think yeah, and that'd be really interesting to see as well. And with the Infinity as well, I think well, Infinite, it's Assassin's Creed Infinity.
Infinity, yes.
Infinity, yeah. Halo Infinite, Assassin's Creed Infinity. But yeah, no, it's something as I said, I was going to say about the Halo Master Chief Collection is that 15 years ago, if you played Halo 3 and you were an absolute don and you were a god at that game, you would get this amazing katana samurai armor. And I mean, like 0.01% of people that played the game got it, and it was like the pinnacle. Nowadays, you just buy it for £10. But that back then,
So
if you
sad.
went into a lobby and someone had that, that was you'd either back out or you just sit in awe at this god. But I think these new Assassin's Creed games this new Assassin's Creed, platform could do something with that, which is that if you were, for example, gonna do Assassin's Creed 1 no hit, or Assassin's Creed 2 and you never hit max notoriety for the entire, you get something that you could then wear in later games or show on an avatar. I think that would also build this real sense of like I've achieved something bigger than just like playing the game. The fans know, and I think that's Assassin's Creed kind of is missing that in some games. There are obviously some great things you can get within the game: weapons, armor, attire. But there hasn't really been too much of this like if you had it, the community know that you are a god
Yes.
at this game. And there are other games do it really well, but I haven't really seen it in Assassin's Creed yet.
I mean, I totally agree with that. And Assassin's Creed is lacking a bit of replayability. I mean, you play the game on launch, you maybe enjoy it, and you jump back to it every now and then. But they could really add a reason to go back, and something like that. It reminds me of Dishonored and the Steam achievements. So only like
Yes, yeah,
0.2% of people have completed that game on a stealth run. They've never been spotted. I
yeah,
remember spending like 2 weeks on that game. Every single time I'd be going for a stealth approach. I'd be going all the way around the outside. And that's a great game for, like we said before, unlocking the opportunities with these
yeah,
additional missions. You could go off down a sewer, and then all of a sudden there's a character. You can do a quest for her, like Granny Rags, for example, is one off the top
yeah,
of my head. And then you can unlock things that will help you later on in the game. And that's exactly it. Replayability, like all these different ways of doing the missions, but have something to show at the end of it. Like
yeah.
you can get cool assassin swords. I mean, I've got replica Assassin's Creed Templar swords upstairs. Like there's all sorts of things because obviously it's based in history. So it'd be really cool if, like you said, there are
Yeah,
recognizable achievements for your actions.
exactly. Yeah, and maybe even the transferability as well. Like, I'd love the idea of being able to go into ancient Egypt in, Ezio's Altair armor, that you get
Yeah.
from the vault. Like that would be awesome. It's completely historically inaccurate, but how cool would it be to climb a pyramid in that attire? Like it'd just be something to make me go back to both games to complete a mission or complete a challenge to then go to this game to go and do. It just gets that community back involved in those maybe earlier games because they want to get something special.
That's it. And I think fans have voiced their opinions on microtransactions now. It's loud and clear. Like, they don't want them in games really, but it's always going to be a thing. But with stuff like this, Ubisoft can do this as just a fan service. Because I mean, the fans who are playing
the new cost them anything for the asset. Like,
no, that's it. They can literally move it across internally. It wouldn't even be difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that obviously they'll go, why would we give it to them when we can make them pay $4.99 for a loot crate with the 5% chance of getting it? And it's like, I think it's a tricky one, especially in a lot of newer games that I've played recently. Some of them you just can't win. You can't complete the game without paying money, especially mobile games. There's a lot of mobile games that you literally get to a point where you have to pay or wait 4 days. And it's especially fun games. I'm trying to think as well. Obviously, I played the Elder Scrolls mobile game.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really cool game. Almost like a mini Skyrim. You go through caves, you find stuff. You do up your town after a dragon attacks it, and it's really, really good. They added like a player v player arena as well. But that game was, I'd say, about 2 hours into that game, you have to buy gems. There is no, like, you literally get stuck with an inability to do a mission and an inability to do the next thing. And it's like players don't want that. And I think Assassin's Creed, with it being less of a multiplayer game, it really doesn't need that DLC. Like an online game, perhaps. Call of Duty needs it, but Assassin's Creed, it's all about the story, all about the character. So I think the character is the most important part, and you don't need to pay. You shouldn't need to pay.
I mean, when they put up these paywalls, it just makes people, I guess, less trustworthy of it, because they just feel like, oh, well, I've already paid all this money for this game and I've not got all the content available. I mean, you can buy the best edition of the game and there's still things you're not going to have.
Yeah.
They're rolling them out week after week. And it's $20 a pack.
Yeah, you could buy, as you said, you could buy the Ultimate Platinum first edition with the poster and the animated character for your, and everything like that. And then you get to month 6, or like there's a DLC that's not included. Oh, £20, and it's like, I just gave you £100.
Yeah, you might as well just set up a direct debit at this point.
It is, yeah, and it's annoying because if you're a true fan and you don't buy it, you do miss a lot. They do put a lot of lore and they do put a lot of story into those DLCs. Oftentimes, like, filling the gaps from the main story. So you kind of feel like you have to go on YouTube and watch someone else play it and not experience it yourself, or pay £20.
It's a real shame, really, isn't it? I mean, Assassin's Creed did this, where they had a year 1 pack of DLC content and then they had a year 2 as well. This was season pass. So when you get a season pass, you expect all the DLC, you expect all the armor sets, you think it's all included in this. And you don't think a year later they're going to be releasing things that you're going to have to buy a second wave of season pass. That's such a Call of Duty move. And this is my worry about Infinity, that they're going to go down the road of monetization where it's all going to be focused on, adding the shop. Yeah, that is it. I mean, they can rebrand it however they like. They can call it like Abstergo credits or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, microtransactions. And then my other worry is, now that's emerged, is NFTs. They're a thing floating around in the gaming community.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that personally, but people can do what they like in their own time. But I don't want to see Assassin's Creed NFTs. You own this exclusive piece of Assassin's Creed online artwork.
Yeah, like you own the Apple of Eden or whatever. Yeah.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Then you've got like, oh, I've got this, I've got that. Like we don't need that.
No, yeah, I get you completely. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now about things they could monetize that you wouldn't want them to monetize, but there is endless amounts.
Let's say Hidden Blade, upgrading that. Imagine if they started charging for each Hidden Blade edition. You can only get like 50 damage unless you pay for these Abstergo credits. People don't want to see that. They just want a big focus on the narrative. Like you said, Assassin's Creed is so
Yeah,
story driven, character driven, and they just need to knuckle down and look at the core pillars of the franchise and what makes it so special.
I think so. Yeah, and I'm just trying to think. Origins was a situation where I was trying to level up towards the end of the game. I was trying to level up my character's armor. I think it was his defense or whatever it was, and I had to go kill like hippos and all those kind of things. Killed lions and tigers on boats and stuff. Or I could pay like £7
Yeah,
just to get the
that's
things I
it.
needed. But
It's the grind, isn't it? And that's not why you play the games.
no, yeah. But you could just speedrun that game. You could just,
Mhm.
because obviously areas needed level 30 weapons and armor, or, certain missions required you to have certain stats. And you could, well, what I did was, go away and hustle and rob the gold from people and take the iron from the ships. But you could just go in the marketplace and spam £10 every couple of days and get there straight away. But it defeats the point.
That's it, and they're making a lot of money from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've already paid. Games aren't cheap now; they've gone up in price as well.
£70, £80 some games. Like it's crazy. And I think the last game I bought, Hogwarts Legacy, good game. Paid £70. Yeah, £75. I bought the Dark Arts edition of that game, so I could get access to the arena, where I could use the unforgivable curses early. And that game was great, and I've 100% completed that game, done everything in 50 hours. I've got 100%. There is nothing else in that game to do, and £70 for 50 hours of gameplay, and I could do everything. Nothing's locked behind a paywall. It was nostalgic. There was Easter eggs. Really fun game. Love that game. But there are other games, Call of Duty. You pay £70, and you don't even get the battle pass. You got to pay £20 for that, and it's like what?
Yeah, wrapping up a shopping list when you play these games, doesn't it?
It is. You got to get a second job.
But yeah, for Christmas this year, I mean, kids aren't asking for clothes or footballs. They're just asking for
battle pass.
Kind of battle pass going to get the gold guns.
Yeah, battle pass. So I can get that one gun that's better than every other gun, but you have to pay for that gun. But yeah, I think Assassin's Creed they've kind of dabbled in the darkness of DLCs and in-game microtransactions, but luckily they kind of moved quickly away from that. There was like a period where it was like, this is actually going to ruin the game, but I kind of feel like they did pull back a lot more than other games have done, like obviously like GTA and things like that. Those are just endless 50p's here and there. But I think Assassin's Creed, they've done well so far, but yeah, as you said, they had a bad financial year, so we don't want them to go, oh, let's just turn Mirage into a shop. And it kind of, even if the game's great, the presence of those pop-ups or the presence of it in the menu could ruin that what the fans want. Even if the game's amazing, just the presence of that could tarnish the quality of the game.
I mean, and this was a problem with Valhalla, where every time you booted the game up, it was saying DLC now available.
Yes, yeah.
The season pass, and it was just as soon as you boot that game up, it's there, it's in your face. And I mean, you're already aware of its existence because you're on on PC, you're on Uplay, and it tells you that there are more upgrades available for the game. But when you boot the game up, and the other thing is you could pause the game and it'd be there floating around. It's everywhere.
Menu,
you can't get away from it.
You just pause it, just so you can change your settings, and then bam, there you are. Get some credits or get this weapon, this cool cutlet. It's like, I like it, but I'm not going to go spend £4 on it. But as you said, they make money from it. And I think, I'm trying to think of other things now that Assassin's Creed done. I guess the movie was decent. I did like the movie. Obviously, critics 50-50, but it's a video game adaptation. None of them have really ever done very well. The World of Warcraft one did okay. Warcraft was pretty good. Have you seen that? The Lara Croft, not the Lara Croft.
Lara Croft one's good.
The Lara Croft, yeah. Tomb Raider one. TV series, the Halo one with Master Chief was the biggest piece of I've ever seen. A bit like the Assassins have honor, Master Chief doesn't take his helmet off. The whole point of it is that when you play as him, you could be him. He could be anyone. That's the whole point, is you never see his face. It's been 20 years, you never see his face. He is the flagship character for Xbox and Microsoft Gaming. You never see his face. Episode 1 of the TV series, he takes it off and goes, what? Firstly, he's like a mutant human. He doesn't have sex drive. He was
Yeah.
a 12-year-old kidnapped child. He got pumped with like alien steroids. And also, why do we see his face? And why is he a Chad? Why has he got a jawline and like a skin fade? Like, what's going on?
There's a lot
So,
of issues there.
so I'm worried. I'm worried that Assassin's Creed. Oh, maybe they saw what happened there and go, actually, maybe we go. But I'm worried that they do try and go for like a mass audience and add like a love interest that isn't really relevant, or add like, a controversy that just doesn't match the brotherhoods. Like we see it. I saw it in Halo, obviously. Adaptations of things like that. I think Rebels did well. Clone Wars and Star Wars did really well. They kind of you got to keep true to what the fans want whilst also adding new stuff, but not just adding something to get more people to watch it, which it did with Halo. They were like, let's make him good looking and let's give him a love interest because maybe some girls will watch it. And it's like, that's not, but it ruined the whole point of the show. And I think Assassin's Creed show, I don't know if you know anything more about it from the inside out, but I'd be worried that they do go down the route of maybe trying to appeal to everyone and not keeping true.
Yeah, I mean, I've not heard anything about the TV series in a very long time. And like I said before, with the production issues they've had with the writing team, and it was something to do with they didn't want all of the writing to be done abroad. So, obviously because they're filming in the UK and everything,
Yeah.
it's just so hard to
Instead of
have
Canada.
a team over there and a team over here. It was just all over the place. But yeah, they've lost the key writer. So maybe behind the scenes they're making some real progress, but not heard anything. And Ubisoft should look to TV series like The Mandalorian, which is Star Wars.
The Witcher. The Witcher is a really good one as well.
Very good. And The Last of Us, very good. A very strong TV show that's just come out. Really impressive. Just a standalone piece. I mean, Assassin's Creed can stand alone on its own, but when it's incorporated into the lore of the franchise and it sits within the timeline, it just feels more organic.
I think so, yeah. And I think, as you said, things like The Witcher and stuff, and The Mandalorian, and even Obi-Wan, they are so popular because you have tens of millions of people that grew up with these idols, these fictional heroes that we saw a piece, we saw 6 hours of film or a couple of video games about them. And now as an adult, we can watch an adult-themed show showing their real life, and it makes them almost human like us instead of the heroes that we used to see. And I think, for example, Ezio Auditore, like Altair, people like, even for me, Connor, like just seeing them in real life would be fantastic, just to see, even if it doesn't have to be action packed and thrilling, just to see them develop and grow as people beyond the video game is really powerful. Like Obi-Wan and then Darth Vader, or Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. That's what, a 5-6 minute fight. One of the greatest Star Wars scenes ever. The Duel of Fates. But then you have, the Clone Wars. You've got like 3 seasons just about that relationship. And as a nerd who loved it when I was a kid, that was so cool. That was amazing fan service. And I think Assassin's Creed, as you said, even standalone, they could do that really well. Pick a good time frame to work on. Doesn't even have to be the best. I think people will like it. There'll be so many people that don't play the games anymore that will go, I remember playing Assassin's Creed 1 on the Xbox. I remember going to Blockbuster and buying that game. I'll watch it, and it could revitalize the whole franchise.
And that's something I'd like to explore more in maybe episode 2 or 3. Just where would people like the TV series to go? What characters, new characters, old characters? So, for example, like when Assassin's Creed, the movie came out in 2016, there was a lot of speculation that Robbie Downey Jr. was going to play Leonardo da Vinci.
He plays Sherlock, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So it's like, would you want these characters we already know to be played by someone else? And who would you be happy with? I mean, a lot of people throw in Chris Hemsworth for Black Flag, Edward Kenway. Yeah, I mean, you see these fan castings all the time, and they're always bouncing around the ideas, but it's just, who would you guys in the comments, like, what would you like to see? And I think the TV series is such a big scope for development of characters. Like the movie only had like a short 2-3 hour window, I mean, sometimes with these things, what they've chopped away is better because I
Yeah,
saw the original uncut version of the Assassin's Creed movie. It was way longer and it was way darker, but it felt really, really engaging. It felt
yeah,
really Assassin's Creed. And then by the time it hit the floor of the cutting room, a lot of it had been stripped away, unfortunately. And then you watch the deleted scenes, and there's some brilliant stuff in there. I mean, there's characters that were removed from the Assassin's Creed movie completely, which is really sad because they were integral to Aguilar and Callum Lynch, and they didn't show the relationship between Aguilar and Maria. And like the book goes into this further, and that's why it's great to have these transmedia products and
yeah.
see the deleted scenes. But like a good example of this would be Justice League, where I mean you've seen what they did with that,
The
but they
Snyder
chopped
Cut.
away so much. It's a
Yeah,
different
it's a
film
different
completely.
film. Yeah, it's just a new
You watch
film.
Snyder Cut, that has got so many layers, and with the TV show, hopefully they can get a good run of maybe 10 episodes and really explore some interesting Assassin's
Yeah,
Creed storylines we've not seen before.
and I think and I think it would work really well. Just taking like the format of The Witcher, which for oftentimes is was quite a slow show. There's obviously action involved in it, but it's still a fantastic show. The exposition, it's just there's so much you can build out, as you said, in a series versus a movie. There's like I prefer movies oftentimes to watch because I'm kind of like a what's happening, has it ended, brilliant. Whereas TV shows always end on a cliffhanger. There's always like something next. Whereas I'm like, I want to get to the bread. what's the thing? But that's the great thing about a TV show is you can have an entire episode about one thing. Whereas in a movie, it's two lines of dialogue, and only the true fans will pick up on the one word that was said or the character referenced. Whereas in a TV show, you can actually bring that character to life, and they're not just a comment in passing; they are their own entity.
And that's what Assassin's Creed needs to focus on, bringing characters to life. I mean, like you said before, characters are like the soul of the franchise. I mean, you remember games by the location and the characters. I mean, yes, the storyline's important, but with this, you really need something that stands out in a crowded market. And there's a lot of assassin-related TV shows out there, films out there, like Hitman. There's a lot of killing, there's a lot of conflict in the world. And TV's really done that. So it's like, how can Assassin's Creed do it in a way that maybe we've not seen before? We can get like the stealth elements, we can get the disguises. You can really play in on that. You are someone who's trying to make a difference through your action.
It's a very random one, but I'd say the new John Wick. John Wick is very much like that as well. And in his movies, he is almost like a righteous vengeance. He's like it's very much almost like an assassin, but more of a offensive assassin versus a covert defensive
standalone assassin.
But people love that. People love someone with a vendetta who's trying to do right, going into the world and trying to make it better, and everyone loves that. So it's not dissimilar to an assassin would, in that same way. Or the Punisher, which obviously is more brutal, more violent, but again, it's a similar story. It's someone trying to rid the world of evil oppressors and people in control by essentially seeking vengeance for what happened to them through violence.
Violence, isn't it? It's just this everlasting cycle.
It is. But obviously, maybe the Assassin's Creed TV show doesn't go down that route of being as violent, so that it's a 12, for example. Maybe they go for the mass audiences, but you can still have that dark undertone. If Doctor Who can have dark undertone and genocide, then so could an Assassin's Creed movie or TV show, where you can reference dark things that have happened in the past.
And that's the interesting thing about an assassin. You can be an assassin but not kill. So it is an ideology. It is just about creating peace and ridding the world of control. So you could have these pacifist assassins who, these non-fighters. You had them in World War II, for example, where people refused to fight on the front lines, but they would still be engaged in the fight. They would be medics, for example, conscientious objectors. And you could have that in the Assassin Brotherhood. You could have a whole cell of assassins that are just people on the inside. They're the people who are the informants. They're hacking cameras, very much like a watchdog scenario. Mr. Robot, I think the TV show's called, all
Yeah,
about the hacking and stuff. You could run down that road, and you could have all these assassins where peace is an option. So not necessarily like a brutal violent. You could mix in the two. So, for example, Sean Hastings in Assassin's Creed, the games, like we've seen him so many times, but they sort of tried to throw him down the road of, oh, he's a killer now. In Syndicate, he performed what looked like his first kill. I
yeah,
mean, and it was like you didn't need to do that. Like you can
yes,
have these characters who they can contribute, they can do all these things for the Brotherhood without raising the blade
yeah,
themselves, and that's interesting to me. And the other thing is, you can have members of the assassin ideology, you know, they believe in it, who are disabled, for example. So there's a
mm,
book, Assassin's Creed, that came out years ago. I can't remember the name right now, but there's a young lad who uses the Animus because he's in a wheelchair, and when he's in the Animus, he can experience running. And his ancestors, of course, were able, they could run around
yeah,
to do parkour, and for him, it's an escape.
yes,
There's
yeah,
so much they can do with it. It's like a ton of ideas there for them. You know, they could get
yeah.
the pen out and write some down, and I'm sure they need something that stands out though. And like you
Yeah,
said, a crowded market with assassin stories.
it is. Yeah, and I think that you touched on that as well. With one of the big things that made I think that made Avatar so compelling as well for that first hour is you watch a veteran who can't use his legs learn mobility in a new
Yes.
body, and that creates this whole other sort of rapport with the character on screen because you feel empathy for him. This whole sense that he's not just become an alien. That first thing he does is run. The very first thing he does when he escapes that room is he just tries to run and jump because he hasn't done it for years. And you're right, there's a lot they can do outside of just stabbing to
That's it.
build that rapport with the characters. And as well as that, I think you said as well, like the fact that some assassins do, you know, not so good things, do some bad things, but then make up for it in other ways, or others, as you said, will do the conscientious objectors in the war. But I think that's why another one about Assassin's Creed 3 I liked is the fact that you do see that Templar assassin comparison with his son and father, and he kind of explains that there are no differences here. It's a different ideology, but we go about it the same way. Like he tries to explain to Connor that you are no different to me. We do the same
Yeah.
thing, and in the end, it's the same outcome. It's just one wins and one loses, and it's which side of the fence you look at depends on how you feel about the situation. I really liked that. That was it was different to other Assassin's Creed games where you do know you have this sense that you are on the righteous path, you are correct. But in that, it kind of ends with, ooh, maybe he has a point. But they could do that in the TV series as well as add conflict, like ideological conflict between characters, not just violence, like good dialogue.
I mean, and that's interesting with the Assassin Brotherhood. You've got the extreme ends of it as well. So, like you said before, there are assassins that have done really bad things. Like you've got Templars that have done really bad things, and it's the same as like a religion, as politics, as anything at all. Like Marxism, for example, like that. That's like a framework of ideology. And then when you take it to the extreme, you've got all these regimes that have risen out of it. So,
Yeah,
like, I imagine that's the same with the assassins. Like, I mean, we've seen it in Assassin's Creed Chronicles Russia, where you literally see atrocities caused by the assassins, and then in Assassin's Creed Rogue as well. The assassins they're causing the earthquakes, that killing people, and like you know arguably like even more terrible than some of the things
yeah,
we've seen the Templars do in the games. So like,
yeah.
who's good and who's bad? That really is up for debate.
It is, and I think and it's one for the character as well, the player to kind of like flesh out and pick a side as well, which is an interesting one. Obviously, you play as an assassin, but that doesn't mean that there are things in the game that you do that you go, oh, I wouldn't want to do that, but the game makes me do that. Or there are, as you said, there's things in the law that kind of create that conflict. And I do think that's a really powerful thing within storytelling as well, is that there are certain elements of a character's past, even if you don't see or play as them or do the act, you know whether it's a dream they have in a cutscene, and it creates this sense of like, oh, there's a conflict. And you said that could be good for Basim as well. It's like there's that sense of conflict in the game could create a real divide in the way that you go about being, playing that character. And I like that. And there's so many different TV shows I'm thinking of which I love, where there is that conflict. Even old ones like Merlin, for example. If you remember, so many times in that he's given a choice, or Arthur's given a choice, and it's not about violence, not about like being a hero. It's just like there is a choice. Do you save one person for 1,000 lives, or do you sacrifice yourself for everyone? And always in those shows, there's a happy ending, but it's this sense that there's always this like bigger picture. They're always given this bigger choice, and it's like, as an assassin, what would the assassin do?
And every action has a consequence.
Yeah,
it really does. And the impact in that world, it must feel like you are making a difference.
Yeah.
So you, or at least believe you're making a difference. So,
yes.
All these people who are doing these acts, that they clearly believe they're right. And that's what's so dangerous about it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about us as well. A lot of, as you said, like a lot of Templars aren't violent tyrants. They are politicians.
Mm-hmm.
They are members of the community, members of the church. And it's their lack of action, or their, the words they speak that cause this damage and this conflict. It's not just about being, going out and killing loads of people in a village. It's sometimes those people haven't killed anyone, whilst the assassin has. But which one is the evil one there? Is it righteous, or is it, benevolence?
That's it. And it's up for the player to decide, or the viewer. And
yeah.
Before we wrap up, I just want to drop back to what you said before about dreams. And that's something that could really feature in Assassin's Creed Mirage. So with Basim having this conflict of interest in his head, they could even have, like in games where you go to sleep, like it's optional normally. So like in Valhalla, you can go to a bed, you can go to sleep. And it's purely to make time jump forward.
Yes,
the sun will come up or whatever. But you can have Basim having a nightmare, and maybe like a prophecy or a foreshadowing or something that changes his mind or makes him doubt, or you could maybe even plant false memories in his mind. You could create fear in his mind. That would be cool.
That would be cool. I'm just on that. I was thinking as well, like the whole sense of like fear and dreams. That I'm trying to think. Have you ever played any of the Arkham games?
No.
With the Scarecrow, there's a scene in that where you are essentially opening up what is the duffel bags, dead body bags in a morgue in the asylum, and you open it, and one of them, and it's Scarecrow, and he throws the thing in your eyes, and then you kind of go into this dream state.
No. Like on Gotham, the TV show.
Yes, yeah. And that's a really interesting one, and it could be something like that as well. Like you said, that Templars using herbs and stuff. It could be the fact that you get poisoned, or and you have these vivid dreams that end up haunting you. There's all sorts of ways you could go about it in the game. But yeah, the idea of like, because that would be quite interesting, because it's a choice for the player. Because if you never skip, if you never like sleep or time jump, you may never see them. But if you do, then it's like that. It's almost like an Easter egg within the game.
And I feel like something like that could manipulate your actions. So if you're seeing like one potential outcome, like a Doctor Strange scenario.
It makes you do it,
Let's say you're having a dream as Basim, but it's actually Loki feeding lies into his. This is what Loki does, isn't it? He's whispering in his ear, he's telling him these things, and you see a certain outcome, and you're like, oh, that could really benefit me in the long term, and then you do it. Maybe it doesn't play out the way you think.
Yeah, and that'd be a really interesting one. Which I think as well, like in the Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix, you see, don't you?
Yes.
The fake dream, or the fake memories, the fake reality that's plants. That you could imagine Loki doing that quite frequently, just especially if as you said, it has real implications. Perhaps you see someone in a dream do something bad, so then later on when you come across that NPC, you kill them.
Or you don't trust. Yeah, you immediately don't trust them.
Yeah, but actually that
Yeah.
they are trying to help you, but you see it as being a spy or as a deceptive play, so you don't take the help, and you end up he ends up alerting the guards because you didn't build a rapport with him or whatever it is. So much that could be done.
That's a really good point with Harry Potter, because if you think about it, Harry's like his interpretation of the dream really is what gets Sirius killed.
It is, yeah. If
So
he
if he
didn't go,
hadn't acted on that dream,
yeah,
so he's almost like sealed his fate.
exactly, yeah. And it's the fact that, and he was warned as well about it, but they're so vivid that he goes against what he had been told. So maybe Basim goes to, and they say, this is, ignore these dreams, but he can't because they're so vivid, they're so powerful, and Loki is so manipulative that he continues to go against the advice. And, I think there's a lot,
I like
a lot to
that.
unpack there, yeah. But I think, yeah, as you said, I pretty much think that's it. Was there anything else you wanted to cover off today?
I think we've covered it really well, actually. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's stuck with us. If you're this far in, you're really down a rabbit hole into all things Assassin's Creed and cultural fiction. We've covered a great range today, haven't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, massive thank you to everyone who's listened and tuned in. We're probably going to break this podcast down into little snippets. We're going to get it on TikTok, social media, and you might see me and Michael again, but then next time we might have other hosts. We're going to really spice it up, get loads of people involved. We're going to get a team. It's really going to be like a platform for people to hang out and just be like a new community space for everyone. So Rally the Creed, we're going to get everyone from the Brotherhood together, bring them together and see what it's all about, see what the community's been up to.
And and on that, when we share it across all the social platforms as well, we may take some of the best comments and at the end maybe ask some of the team for their feedback and responses. So if you have any good comments, leave them below, and we'll take some of the best ones each week and maybe give you a shout out and see what the team think about what you have to say.
Nice one, mate. That's been fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to be back on Rally the Creed. It's been 2 long years, but I'm glad we've finally got the reboot going. Got to get some new graphics going for it. We're just going to make it stand out and just be something that thrives on its own. And then we'd like to get to a place where people are jumping on, jumping off. We go live and then we get interviews and just become this whole new thing. And maybe even get Ubisoft involved. That'd be cool.
Yeah, essentially, we just want to get as much engagement from you guys as we can. And as Carl said, just make this something bigger than just us speaking amongst ourselves and really giving the community a voice as well. And using this as a platform to kind of spread our thoughts and wisdom on the Assassin's Creed.